Welcome to Nature Revisited, a podcast that explores our relationship with the natural world. It consists of interviews, stories, and discussions that highlight the notion that nature is not a place one goes to, but rather a place one is already a part of, that we are nature. My name is Stefan Van Norden, and thank you, everyone, for joining me on this episode with Cynthia Jurs, Summoned by the Earth. In 1990, Cynthia undertook a pilgrimage where she met a 106-year-old Sherpa Lama living in a cave high in the Himalayas, where he instructed her in the practice of Earth Treasure Vases, a practice dedicated to bringing healing and protection to the earth. So when I first learned about Cynthia and Earth Treasure Vases, I was intrigued by the idea of taking clay pots and burying them in different places around the world. After reading Cynthia's book, Summoned by the Earth, I contacted her to ask if she would join me on Nature Revisited to talk about her incredible journeys with her Earth Treasure Vases. So Cynthia joins me from her home in Los Alamos, New Mexico, where she was first summoned by the earth. Cynthia, welcome to Nature Revisited. I am very excited to have you on the podcast to talk about your new book, Summoned by the Earth.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I was just actually looking at your website and seeing all the other people you've interviewed. So thank you so much for having me here. It's wonderful to be able to have this conversation with you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Summoned by the Earth starts with you visiting an old man in a cave. Who was he and what brought you there?
I had the chance back in 1990 to go and meet this old Lama who lived in a cave in a remote part of Nepal. And I realized as I was walking up the path that I was actually being given the opportunity to go meet the proverbial old wise man in the cave. This was a great opportunity. And I should ask him a question. His name was, to me, Charak Rinpoche, Charak after the place where he resided in his cave, known as Charak. It's in the Everest region of Nepal. His formal name was Kushuk Mangdon Rinpoche. I was told he was 106 years old when I met him. There I was having this amazing opportunity. I had to really look deeply at what my question was and how to make the most of this moment, not just for myself, but for others who could never go there. The thing that came to me was my concern about the earth and my love for the planet and for the web of life. I was at the time grappling with the issue of radioactive waste coming off of the production of nuclear weapons at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, just across the Rio Grande Valley where I live in Santa Fe. So that was all I could think about until I finally had the chance to talk with him.
So what did you ask him, and what was his answer?
What can we do to bring healing and protection to the earth? First, he told me even one person can bring benefit to the whole area around where they live. If you are living a good life and dedicating that life to being of benefit, to helping others, your good intentions will ripple out. But he looked at me right in the eyes and he pointed at me and he said, but you need to get these Earth Treasure Vases and you need to put them in the ground and they will do that work. These are clay pots filled with prayers and symbolic offerings of healing and protection that are then filled and sealed and planted in the ground in a region where healing and protection is called for, which of course is everywhere. My rational mind was dumbfounded. What's a little clay pot filled with prayers and symbolic offerings going to actually do? But the other part of me was getting in touch with the fact that, well, we have to do everything, we have to try anything. Who's to say that a little clay pot filled with prayers and offerings isn't going to help? So I said, where can I get some? And I was directed to a monastery where the abbot there said, of course, how many do you want? And my mind just shut down because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know whether to ask for 7,000 or 7. And I said, well, I don't know, 25? They were very responsive, and they normally would fill them themselves with very specific symbolic offerings that have been passed down through the ages. Because the vases had to travel across the planet, and they're never supposed to be opened once they're filled and sealed, they decided to mix some of these substances into the clay, and then give the vases to us to then fill and seal and bury. They just said, put them in the ground, they'll do the work. So we started working with them, and gradually over the years, they have gone out around the planet, and a whole global community has come together around this practice. We received 30 originally, and then another 40 came along sometime later, and then eventually we crafted another 30 with a Native American potter here in New Mexico. We've got close to 100 in the ground and or in the process of being placed in different locations around the planet.
For a lot of us who are even familiar with Buddhism, the idea of Earth Treasure Vases is new. Can you give a little bit of the history of this practice?
In the 8th century, there was born a great master who was named Padmasambhava, known also as Guru Rinpoche. And Padmasambhava traveled from India to Tibet and brought Buddhism to Tibet, as Buddhism has done, traveling to different cultures. It evolved and changed and taken on the spirit of that land and that culture in various ways while retaining the essence of the teachings. So Padmasambhava and one of his disciples, a woman named Yeshe Tsogyal, were known for bringing forward teachings that were called dharma, but were actually meant for another time. They weren't really needed then, but would be needed in the future. And this practice of the Earth Treasure Vases was one of those. The way that tradition is often passed on is through the reincarnation of great masters. There were a number of lineages, I should say, who brought forward the practice of the treasure vases, but one of the ones, Dujim Lingpa, was one of the great revealers of dharma. They say that the treasure vase practice came forward during the Industrial Revolution, when the relationship to the earth really did begin to change drastically. But today, a number of lamas have recognized that and have carried forth treasure vases here and there. But the way that they came to us was kind of different because, as I told you earlier, the vases are normally filled and sealed by the lamas kind of behind the closed doors of the monasteries. In our case, they came empty, just humble clay pots. It was up to us to fill them and then take them wherever they were supposed to go. That process, in a sense, I think really brought the practice to life in a very real way for us in this contemporary world. We weren't relying on the lamas to do it for us. As we discovered, if we're taking a treasure vase to some country in Africa, the offerings that are meaningful for that culture and community are going to be very different than what would be meaningful in Tibet.
So once you received your Earth Treasure vases, how difficult was it deciding where to place each vessel?
First of all, it was impossible to, quote unquote, decide where to go. The calling from the earth herself is so enormous, and there's so many locations. So we had to kind of open to something larger than ourselves to know how to respond, to know where to take them. Everywhere in the world needs help, needs our attention. And that in some ways it doesn't really matter because it's all important. We did start here in New Mexico, the first treasure vase, going to a place in the mountains above Los Alamos National Lab. And that became known as the center of what is now called a global healing mandala all around the planet. We placed a vase at the source of the Rio Grande and at the mouth of the Rio Grande. Sources of rivers are traditionally understood to be powerful locations because they carry the prayers that are in the vase all the way down the flow of the river and out into the sea. So that began this process here. I was interested in the mandala teachings because in its most basic form, the center and the four directions, each of which is connected to one of the elemental energies that makes up life on Earth: air, earth, fire, water, and space. From that place of having planted the first 5, they started to go out all around the planet, and people would come forward and say, what about this place or what about that place? And I felt as if we needed to go as best as we could to embrace the whole planet.
So what did you learn from your pilgrimage to India to place a vessel at the origins of the Ganges?
That was one of the early pilgrimages. We took one of the treasure vases to all the places of the Buddha's life. From there, we went to the Ganges, and it's a river that is considered holy and sacred, and we wanted to go to the source as close as we could get to the source of the Ganges. And so we traveled from all the places of the Buddha's life up through the Gangetic Plain. We witnessed the damming of the Ganges River, kind of a tragedy really, because that river is such a huge artery, a life force, flowing into the land, and they were in the process of damming it up. We met an elderly woman who was really a holy woman, holy saint, who had lived on the shores of the Ganges. The Ganges River was her teacher, was her source of refuge. She blessed the treasure vase and told us where to go, where to take it. It was too early in the season to get all the way to the glacier where the river begins, but we got as close as we could, and we buried it way, way up there.
Can you share with us who Nema Nama Damu, who she is, and your trip into the heart of darkness?
I went to the Democratic Republic of Congo with one of the Earth Treasure vases. It is a place known of epidemic rape of women and of the land itself because of the minerals that are found in the very, very rich lands of Congo. And Congo, too, is known as the heart of Africa. The Congo River flows through the heart of Africa. But there's such a demand for the resources in Congo that the rape of the earth is uncontrolled. I wanted very much to take a treasure vase there. I was afraid to go there, but I wanted to go. And I also wanted to make contact with the indigenous peoples of Congo, one of the most ancient cultures of the earth, the Pygmy people. I was gratefully introduced to the woman that you mentioned, Nema Nama Damu, who I met through an organization called World Pulse. And she was in Congo learning how to get online and tell her story. I think it was age 3, she contracted polio and became disabled, but her mother carried her on her back to go to school. and she ended up going to college and earning 2 degrees. I wrote to her and said, would you be interested in helping me do this? And we had an amazing journey with the treasure vase into what Joseph Conrad called the heart of darkness. But it's anything but that. Congo is one of the most beautiful places on earth. And so Nema helped me take the treasure vase around. We brought it into ceremony with people in various places, and then we took it into one of the largest forests still intact there. You know, I wanted to go where the Pygmy people lived, bury the vase in the forest, because Congo's rainforests are second only to Brazil. They provide oxygen for the whole earth, and they're being cut down rapidly to exploit the land. And there's very little oversight and control over all of that.
So what brought you to Australia, and who did you meet there?
Well, I knew I had to go to Australia because it's a whole continent. I didn't really know too much about Australia, and one day a friend of mine who was working with me at the time, she called me up and she said, Cynthia, would you like to meet the custodial elder of Uluru, Ayers Rock? He's in town. She knew we wanted to get a treasure vase into Australia. And so Uncle Bob Randall, who is no longer with us, he invited me to bring the treasure vase to Australia, to Uluru. And the Dalai Lama was speaking in Sydney, and so we started in Sydney, and the Dalai Lama stopped at the altar one day and picked up the little vase and said, here it is, and he blessed the little treasure vase. Then from Sydney we went to Uluru, and in Australia they have a tradition of welcome to country. So we were welcome to country everywhere we went, and it was just amazing to feel that life force of that land, the Aboriginal people. And Uncle Bob and his community at Uluru, this is Ayers Rock in the center of the country, this great sacred place. And he made offerings into the vase and blessed it, and we were so moved to be with him. But we had this intention to take it up into Northern Territory, to Arnhem Land, which is the area that was indicated as where the vase should be buried. And there we were introduced to another elder, Auntie Margaret Catherine, who is from the Jawan people, and we invited her to guide us into Arnhem Land. And she checked us out, and then she said, okay, let's go. And she hopped into one of the vehicles and came along with us and guided us along our way. We got up into Arnhem Land, and she said, you know, honey, I'll do whatever you want. She called the treasure vase my teacher, and she knew it was alive. She understood it completely. The fact of the matter is that everyone, everywhere, realizes that the earth is out of balance and that prayers are called for, and so are actions. And the vase, once it's opened, it's like this little vessel that is there to receive whatever we put into it. People cry into it, and they pour their hearts into it, and they bring their most holy, sacred, precious offerings because they love and care about the earth so much. And so they become like receptacles to really facilitate the process of us getting in touch with what we care about, what we really deeply care about. And that catalyzes us into action. She looked at me one day and she said, you know, this isn't really a very good place because it floods every year, but I know a really good place. Then told us where to go. And when the treasure vase was planted in that ground, it was actually the last of the original set of treasure vases that I received from the lamas in Nepal. And so when that happened, I felt as if I had fulfilled the promise, although it was obvious that many more were called for. But when that vase went into the ground, I felt as if the whole mandala came to life as a whole, and that the earth, the whole earth had been kind of linked up through this practice. And these little holy vessels, as Joanna Macy called them, were radiating their prayers and their intentions and their love and caring that we had poured into them over all these years into what the Australian Aboriginal people call the songlines.
Throughout the book, you talk about the importance of the feminine in nature and your devotion to the earth. Just how important is the sacred feminine in helping to heal the planet?
There's a lot of ways to approach that question. We have spoken about the imbalance in the world, and I think one of the main sources of that imbalance is the power dynamic that has taken hold through the patriarchal system long ago. And all of the religious and political structures that govern life on Earth are conditioned by that patriarchal system, which has abused their power. So we need to move on from that. We need to move into a time of restoring balance. The feminine nature is a force to be reckoned with. It embodies a way of being that is receptive to the web of life, receptive to nature's teachings, recognizes the need for care and compassion for all beings, looking to the earth as our teacher in these times, looking to Gaia, not so much looking to the gurus or the leaders thinking that they're going to take us where we need to go or tell us what to do, looking to our own true nature and the deep caring in our own hearts and seeing the incredible teachings that the earth is offering us. We are not separate from her or from each other or from all life.
So, what is sacred activism?
Well, we know what activism is, right? It's trying to make a difference, to bring change and transformation in the world in all kinds of ways. Mostly we think of activism as pounding the pavement, holding up signs. There's that form of activism, which is important, very important. So sacred activism is the recognition that there's more to it. Change starts with our intention, with our awakening, really, to something that we love and care about, that we want to give our lives to. We're kind of just perpetuating the problem. And so to stop and take a breath and come back to our true self, our true nature, and really ask what I'm about to do contributing to the peace and the restoration that is called for. Because we have to start with ourselves. And what is it that I love and care about most? That is my gift, my offering. Because each of us has a different gift or offering. Some of us are living our lives on the big, huge public stage, and some of us are planting little seeds in our own backyard. So sacred activism is also recognizing that life is sacred. And this beautiful web of life that we're a part of on planet Earth is a sacred responsibility. And so to awaken that love that's in our hearts, that we care about, and not be numb to the world, to face into the suffering, and then to see what it catalyzes in us out of compassion, and then to act from that place. And out of that kind of action, I think real change comes. So it's change that comes from an awakened awareness.
What do you hope people will take with them from reading your book?
In these times, I think the earth is the great awakener. And so I take refuge in her. But what the treasure vases taught me is that, here they are, these little holy vessels filled with prayers and offerings and these little pots that you take around and all of that. And all of that's great. And yes, planting them in places has resulted in kind of incredible things here and there. But what they really do is they open us to realize that we are each a holy vessel ourselves. And we are each filled with incredible, beautiful gifts. The earth is calling us. The title of the book is Summoned by the Earth. I feel as if so many of us are actually being summoned. And we're also overwhelmed, and we're stuck in the rat race, and we don't know what to do, and we feel like we're just nobody, but that's not true. It's been amazing to go around the world, to Africa and Australia and all these places, to meet people in such different parts of the world and find that everybody cares. Everybody does. And so let's support each other in finding that calling and answering it.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Cynthia Jurs, and that you take the opportunity to read her wonderful book, Summoned by the Earth, and visit her website, earthtreasurevase.org. If you enjoyed this episode, share with friends, family, and colleagues. And please rate us on your favorite podcast server. It will help us to reach a larger audience. You can follow Nature Revisited on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or our website, nordenproductions.com. I would also like to invite you to share your comments and ideas, and even suggestions for future guests for Nature Revisited on the comment section of this episode on our website. The music for Nature Revisited is Tim Buckley, Buzz and Fly. Nature Revisited is produced by Stefan Van Orden and Charles Gagan. And I hope you will join me for the next edition of Nature Revisited. And in the meantime, remember, we are nature.